This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on SiriusXM. Progress.
Welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Thursday, August 10th. And we are the Patriots. Joining me now is one of my fellow Patriots in our stand to save our Democratic Republic from an authoritarian fascist movement. It is Jennifer Taub, law professor at Western New England University School of Law, author of the book Big Dirty Money. She also has podcasts booked up with Jen Taub. She writes a Substack newsletter, which I get. A lot of stuff going on. Jen, good to see you, Professor. How are you?
I'm really good. It's so nice to see you, Dean. Oh, there's my dog growling.
It's fine. It's what kind of dog?
He is a mini Bernedoodle.
I don't know what that is, but I like it. I love dogs. I don't know what a Bernedoodle. I'm sure if I've seen a picture of a Bernedoodle, I can hear you. That's very funny. All right. So before you came on in the monologue tonight, that went on forever, just to happen that way. I already shared on Tuesday's show how concerned I was that we were seeing an uptick in what I call MAGA chatter. Remember Al-Qaeda chatter? We were seeing MAGA chatter, and that it's uptick. And then Wednesday, we have the guy in Utah who would rather die than give in to the FBI, a Trump supporter who has posted stuff about Alvin Bragg and looking forward to killing him and President Biden and all that. And my concern is when you see the threats against Judge Chutkan, that she has more security now, and Fani Willis, and Alvin Bragg, and Trump's comments with Mike Pence about he went to the dark side and he thinks he's a tough guy now. It really feels like we're going to where Trump wants us to go. I mean, let me ask you this. Is it fair to say, in your view, that Trump does want some violence, or at least the threat of violence out there to help him?
Absolutely. I have studied the work of, I'm sure you have, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and Trump admires and has become an authoritarian type leader. And I think he actually enjoys appearing like a strong man. And I don't think, I think just like people used to say, the cruelty is the point with him, the domination is the point. And, he kind of got off on saying, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, I wouldn't lose any of my supporters. That's something he said when he was first running for president. I tend to believe people when they say things like that, and that's who he still is. I mean, right now, I could go off in a monologue like you would. I'm not like you did. I'm not afraid of the violence because I expect some, but I also think law enforcement is more on top of it. And also, I think that we have been seeing in the past few days a bit of a change ever since the third indictment, ever since Jack Smith's second indictment, but his Donald Trump's third indictment. We're slowly seeing members of the Republican Party kind of back away. And even last night, I don't know if you saw news of this on Newsmax, which is usually a friendly outlet for Donald Trump, after they had him on the show at the very end of his appearance, I guess, the host said, "Oh, and by the way, we here at Newsmax believe the election results are valid." No, that's in part because I think they're being sued by some of the, I forgot which of the vote tabulation or the election software companies are suing them. But the more that starts to happen, I think the more I am hoping there's a tipping point, and maybe his core supporters will never abandon him. But there are some people kind of on the fringes of those core supporters who are going to say enough already. My hope is that when he is indicted and has to get his mugshot taken in Georgia, that they actually don't let him do the comb over and makeup, and they have a real mugshot. No, but in all seriousness, at some point, the guy is gonna look like Saddam Hussein hiding in a hole. It's enough. We've had enough.
We can dream, right, of that. It's look, the Trump supporters. I had Rick Wilson on last night, from the Lincoln Project, and he said their studies have shown, or their data has shown, there's a bigger percentage of Republicans, even white men, who will not support Donald Trump this time that support him in 2020 after January 6th. And I think that what also plays in the factor is that they also understand that Biden is, it's not like there's a chance if he won last time he's there for 8 years, just for one more term. And we also understand the race for 2028 for president begins literally the day after the election in 2024, because it's going to be an open seat. So
Mhm.
they get it. It's a little easier. And he thinks the percentage of Republican men who won't support Trump has gone up from 3% to more like 8 to 10%. And he goes,
Wow.
this is the election. And so look, things can change either way. So it's not about electoral concerns to me. We're going to beat Trump. It's not about personal safety concerns. I had Trump literal neo-Nazis who wanted to kill me a few years ago and I sued them. I don't care. I'm half Sicilian. I'm from Jersey. These things really don't bother me. They embolden me on some bizarre level, but I'm concerned for our nation and the health of our democratic republic and the damage this guy can do between now and next November. And then after, when he loses, the month and two after that, until he hopefully is sent off to prison. But let's talk about, so Jack Smith today proposed January 2nd, 2024 for the trial date. I wish he would pick January 6th. She'd been like, we're going to start on January 6th just to troll Trump, but he didn't do that. And from a point of view,
I think
though,
that
so
might
people
be a
understand,
Saturday, right? It's
still,
January
we
6th.
still say it. I don't even care. Like, we want to start January. We're going to special having it on a holiday. But so people understand, when Jack Smith does this, now the other side comes back. And when do you think a real trial date? I mean, it's all speculative, but when do you think a real trial date could happen in this? Or do you think there's a chance January could be a trial date?
So let me start with what I think about the date he selected, and then kind of talk about what the other side might what Donald Trump's counsel might want. I think January 2nd is kind of like the perfect date. You know, it's the first day of non-holiday day of the year. To the extent that the trial could actually be done in 4 to 6 weeks, you only bump into one Republican primary in that time period. It would be the Iowa caucus, which is the Republican caucus on the 15th of January. But other than that, it's kind of, I think, clear sailing until like the 6th of February. So look, in theory, you could get this thing done before the primary contest. And I think that's really important in terms of, you know, I am a Democrat, but for the Republican Party, right now, Donald Trump is the lead candidate, and they may prefer to have, you know, some sort of clown like Ron DeSantis running without having, you know, Donald Trump as the lead. I mean, in the interest of democracy, we need functioning political parties, and having Donald Trump be the leader of the Republican Party it does not make it function. It's kind of a clown car fascist
Do you
party
think
at this
January?
point. So that would be good because, yeah.
Right. I'm just putting my lawyer hat on, and to be fair, with due process for a defendant. In fact, I had Norm Eisen on last week, and he thought a fair amount of time for defendants to prepare would be about 6 to 7 months. He used to be in the same firm as John Lauro, the Trump lawyer. And he told me, he said he's actually a good lawyer. And he said, you can't tell because he's limited in the facts and the law. He can argue now, but he actually said he's a good lawyer. But
Sure.
To me, I actually think, based on what Norm Eisen said, that, and he was just being objective as well, you probably need more than 3 months to prepare for this kind of trial for a defendant. But I'm hoping that the judge gives like a March trial date, and that's a firm date and a real
I'm sorry,
date,
you said three. You said 3 months.
3 months would be too short. Like if you do it August now, he was indicted the end of July, and then August, September, October, November, December. That's 5 months, but still, this first month it's kind of hard to count. January, I think a March, like first week of March, is fair to the defendant, fair to what Jack Smith talked about, speedy trial. And it's not just for the defendant, it's for the public to have this speedy. I would love January. I'd love the trial be tomorrow.
No,
I mean,
I hear you,
I'm
but
just saying,
I'm very concerned though about the fact that we have Super Tuesday coming up on March 5th. And it just seems really chaotic to me that we're trying to get people out to vote. And if you're talking about safety concerns, I think that voting, I would be concerned about threats to the vote in those spaces. I think it makes more sense to have it earlier, but it's not really going to be up to me.
I'd love it to be January. I think, look, the GOP primary is not competitive at all. I don't think his supporters are going to be, if any percentage of it that would be prone to violence, and there's some small little number, there's what they're to be violent about there.
I'm concerned they're going to go into the Democratic primary. I mean, in other words, when we get to Super Tuesday, whatever, I shouldn't go there. But the point is, I think it's perfect, but you're right. I mean, the other choice is to push it into what I see is if it's not going to happen before the primaries, then it's probably going to be pushed out into maybe sometime in March when there's that window of time. And I don't have all the primary dates in front of me, but I think there might be a window of time after Super Tuesday when there may be less going on. Who knows? It just seems awfully surreal that we're going to see this guy, out campaigning, doing stump speeches in stadiums, what have you, and then sitting with his, hands folded in his lap, glowering, at everyone around him in a criminal courtroom all at the same time. I mean, talk about reality TV if they have it, if they actually air it.
Do you want to see? There's such a this. Most people I've talked to want it aired, but there are concerns about airing it. Where do you come down on the idea of airing this trial?
I initially equivocated, but now I come down with we should air it. This is history. I mean, I'm going to try to, if it's in January during the break between classes, I mean, I will try to get in line and be there for some of the dates. But
you should tell Judge Chutkin that it works good for you to do this in January. Send an amicus brief to Judge Chutkin. Judge, if you're thinking about a trial day, I just want to mention I have a break from classes. It would be really convenient for me if you could do this early January.
We have spring break too in March, I think. So, it will work out for me as it often does, Dean. I'm not worried.
Here's the thing. I think that the trial could happen. Look, it could happen anytime, but it could be January, it could be more likely March, April. It could happen in June after the primaries. He could be the presumptive nominee and you try him before the RNC. And out of fairness, that gives the Republican Party a chance, if he's convicted, to on national TV, make a choice, like old time conventions, you just change you vote for a new candidate, or they literally nominate a guy who's just been convicted for attempting a coup and let America see that. It's win-win for me. So I don't mind if the trial's in June and it ends in July, he's convicted and they have the convention in August, and then they're going to go nominate a man who was convicted by a jury of attempting a coup. Now, of course, if there's a hung jury, it's a whole different thing.
Look, that's your idea. That's your idea. I don't want you to tell that to the judge. I think June is way too late, Dean. I do believe that this, the purpose of the Speedy Trial Act isn't just for defendants who might be, in pretrial detention or want to clear their names. It's also for the public to move this forward.
So I'm chatting with Jen Taub, law professor at Western New England University School of Law. Do you think tomorrow we will hear in the discussion of protective order in the oral argument, which we can't see, but would you think something will be raised even by the judge, which is called sua sponte, the judge raises it, or the state raises it, the government raises it, the idea of Trump's comments about the DA, about prosecutors, or about Mike Pence? He's a witness in this case. And his comment that he went to the dark side, that has nothing to do with politics in 2024. That's all to do with him being a witness.
Yeah, I would expect both the government to bring it up and the judge to respond. When I was at the E. Jean Carroll trial, supporting her, she's a friend of mine, but I was sitting in the room, for a few days, including jury selection. There were times when Donald Trump was putting things up onto social, and the Robbie Kaplan and her team mentioned it to the judge, and the Judge Kaplan, no relation, admonished Joe Tacopina, and he said, "Okay, I'll tell my client." But it becomes a little bit of a well, I can't really control my client, Judge. I'm doing my best. If it were me, and I understand maybe it's not the norm, but if it were me, I would have Donald Trump. Maybe she'll do it next time, but have him in the courtroom and say, there seems like, I think if I were her, if he continues, whatever she ends up ruling in terms of the protective order, if he seems to violate it, I would haul him in to court and have him explain it to me directly. I'm surprised she's not having him show up right now. I mean, I would use all the power I have as a judge. You would not be requiring him to show up in court would cause there's no appealable issue. I would make him be there, not just his lawyers, because I'd want to hear from him, not just his lawyers, what his plans would be for a compliant. But maybe she's going to wait until she's ordered and then haul him in when he violates it. The first time he comes in, I would say, "Now do you understand? Next time, bring your toothbrush."
And you're going in, folks. That's it. The toothbrush is the code for you're going inside to prison. And so next week, the grand jury is expected. I mean, I really thought it was going to be this week, expected to potentially indict Donald Trump. How meaningful is it now to still have him indicted in Fulton County, Donald Trump, and co-conspirators, even though he has the federal charges?
Well, I mean, I believe, that states are autonomous jurisdictions and have interests in protecting their citizens. So that's one thing in terms of rule of law. But secondly, to the extent that, because I'm not as sanguine as you are, I think I think there's a strong chance that he wins. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. Third party candidates, older candidates from the Democratic Party,
Oh,
anything can happen.
2024? True.
Yeah.
No, I don't take it for granted. Yeah.
So he can either, he can easily throw those cases out or try to pardon himself, or if another Republican wins, they could pardon him. The thing about a trial and conviction from Georgia is that he would have no control over that, and neither would unless the law changes the governor. So if he were convicted, that would be whatever sentence he would have to serve. Also, I think one thing we have not seen yet is anyone else actually indicted alongside him. And from what I understand, reading probably the same news that you are, there might be a dozen altogether, at least, people indicted. That's news. I think watching who those people are, there being real accountability for people around him all at the same time, none of whom he can pardon, is going to be a very different situation than the past.
But with that many, if it's a sprawling case with many defendants, unless they sever the trial of Trump, that trial is not going to happen for a long time. I mean, that's going to happen after. It's kind of interesting. No one talks about the Manhattan case, which I guess tentatively has a March trial date here in New York for the hush money, they call it.
Yeah.
The hush money case is what they call it. And I know Alvin Bragg, they said they'd put it off if the federal trial goes first. They're fine with that. But I wonder if all of a sudden this stealth thing happens where like no one's paying attention. His lawyers are, of course, and the trial date comes up and we're on trial here in New York unexpectedly first because the federal cases, for whatever reason, get pushed off. It's not what I would like. I think the January 6th trial should go first. That was an attack on our republic, and it needs to go first. It needs the nation to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you, my hope and my expectation is that gets pushed aside for the more important case. And one thing we haven't talked about, though, is he has plenty of other civil cases happening, including E. Jean's, it's called Carol 1, the very first case she brought, which is going to be tried second, where all of a sudden now the DOJ is no longer defending Donald Trump based on the evidence and testimony from the previous trial. So he is on his own on that one. And it's just really going to be, I think, a trial on damages. That's scheduled to start January 15th. Now, in theory, I don't know that you could actually have two trials going on at once, but he doesn't show up at his civil trial. So, maybe it's perfectly fine to have two federal cases going on at once.
And his defamation lawsuit against E. Jean Carroll was dismissed, wasn't that? Was that like a week ago?
That is true. He tried to, tried to counterclaim with that, and that did not work.
It's interesting. And by the way, in the first case where she got the $5 million judgment, that what's going on with the appeal is because she doesn't get her money. We talked about this. I think you told me it gets deposited with by a bond with a court type of a situation until the appeal is done. Is that just still ongoing?
Yeah, I don't know where that appeal is right now. I mean, this is one of the things about, I think what we're learning, is that people with a lot of money can drag out the justice system. I mean, I think we should have known this if we'd read Charles Dickens' novel Bleak House, which I actually never read because it seemed like a slog. But that's a case, what Jarndyce versus Jarndyce, about some sort of estate lawsuit that goes on, forever. Well, a lot of people, if they lose a civil case, would just try to settle because they don't want the expense of continuing to appeal, especially a case like this, which is no way he's going to ever win. With Donald Trump, he holds onto his money as long as he can. He would lose money before he would, in a case like this, settle, because he is still adamant and still lying about the fact that he raped her.
And interest payments are running up because interest rates are high. So the post-judgment interest goes up. What's the name of the case by Charles, the book by Charles Dickens?
It's called Bleak House. Bleak House, and the case inside of Bleak House is Jarndyce versus Jarndyce.
I don't know this. There's no Ghost of Christmas Future in that one. So you're saying it's a whole different case. Like
Scrooge is everywhere
I
in
like that
Dickens,
one.
though, right?
So I'm chatting with Jen Taub, law professor. So what do you think? We don't have to get into too much detail because I do want to get to Clarence Thomas for a few minutes before we're done. But Judge Aileen Cannon, is she still trying to help Trump? Because now she's putting pressure on special counsel. She wants them to explain, why did you use grand juries outside of the district, which I talked to a former prosecutor, said they do this all the time. What is going on here? And she's unsealing things that the government wanted sealed. Is she just part of Trump's legal team at this point? I mean, should we just view her like that?
Well, she's certainly not acting with the kind of intelligence that a judge with her authority should be. She seems to be ignorant of the law. And, this thing about she should not have disclosed the fact that there was this other grand jury. I mean, some of us wonder, well, how do we find out about grand jury proceedings? Well, there's a rule that government officials at least aren't supposed to disclose the existence of the grand jury or what goes on in it. If you're a witness of the grand jury, that rule does not apply to you. So that's how we sometimes find out about their existence. In this case, she was admonishing the prosecutors because they were using this grand jury based in DC to look at some of the obstruction and other unlawful allegations down in Florida. But the reality is, I mean, hello, Donald Trump went from DC to Florida, and the documents also traveled that way. So it's perfectly normal when you have dual jurisdictions to have that going on. What's also troubling, it's something that I think Andrew Weissman might have noticed the other day, is that she brings some of this up only after she heard, or only after Trump's lawyers went on television complaining about this. Now, who knows if one of her law clerks or she saw that, but there's a little weird parallel coincidence. So yeah, I'm not impressed with her independence and objectivity or intelligence. So
look, that case, many lawyers have said, many former prosecutors, it's easier to prove against Donald Trump. But I have a sense Judge can't look for any excuse to keep adjourning it, and this kind of stuff just slows things down. And the January 6th case should go first in any event. It's not about convicting Trump. It's about trying him for attempting a coup. That's what's important to me. And look, I mean, if the state makes their case, the government makes their case, and he's actually acquitted, like all jurors vote to acquit him, I can live with it. A hung juror of one, I'm not going to live with. We're going to try him again. But if somehow there's an acquittal, I believe in the system.
Look, whether I believe in the system, and that means sometimes people make bad choices as jurors. So I agree with you. If there's a hung jury, of course, there should be another trial. Look, we retained a little bit of hope that Aileen Cannon would behave better this time around than she did when she delayed and made some bad choices that were overturned by the federal court above her. I hate to call another lawyer who is even a judge a hack, but some people might call her a hack.
She should have, if she had any decency, she would have recused herself from this case. The idea that the guy you're presiding over his case gave you the job. Like if we read about that in another country, that a former leader was on trial.
On the other hand, I guess you make a point. I mean, I guess it would be, there are plenty of other judges that were appointed by Republican politicians. They chose that jurisdiction, though. The likelihood of them getting her for this case was very high because of what they did. So, I think she definitely appears to feel beholden to him. One of my kids at dinner is often pointing out to me that when she was either at her nomination hearing or at some point, she had to say what her publications were. And they were like things from her college newspaper were included on her publication list. I mean, it's a pretty skimpy resume.
Yeah, I know that she was a former prosecutor and not much more. The last couple of minutes here, Clarence Thomas again. I mean, there's so many scandals, they kind of lose interest. But ProPublica had a new article today about he has more than one billionaire. He's got a lot of billionaires. Harlan Crow, he's got a lot of billionaires. I mean, he's just being greedy now, hoarding all the billionaires. Like, I should have a billionaire. You should have a billionaire that takes you on luxurious vacations too. So what's your reaction to more billionaires now taking him on private 737 jets and on yachts? We didn't even know about this stuff, folks. And some of it didn't have to be disclosed, but experts say some of it should have been disclosed and he never did.
Yeah, this is an excellent article from the team over there at ProPublica. I think Jesse Eisinger, my friend, is part of that group. I don't know if when I printed it out, I couldn't see the byline. But yeah, I mean, this article has a gift count. I like this graphic. There were 38 destination vacations, 26 private jet flights, 12 VIP passes to professional and college sporting events, 8 helicopter flights, 2 stays at luxury resorts, and 1 standing invitation to an exclusive members only golf club. And if you look at the details of this, I mean, this is like, on Sesame Street, the count, like this is like not the kind of count you don't want to have like, hi, here's the Supreme Court justice. Let's count all the grift. That's not what we want to teach the kids. I was shocked by some of this disclosure because some of the people here who were whining and dining him did have cases before the court, and others seem to have, or at least in one instance, there had been a case, and then later there was the gifting. But it's all about, why did he not disclose this? It's also about, look, there's a path for lawyers who graduate from Yale Law School. If they want to have a ton of money, he could have taken that path.
Yep.
When you take a path, he was in government service and then he decided he wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. You don't just wake up one morning and go, oh gosh, golly, thanks so much for the honor. That's a choice you make to be in government service. And it's like me, like I could be a corporate lawyer. I'm not doing it anymore, or in-house counsel. I loved that work. Now I teach. I don't get to, because I don't make the kind of money I could. I don't get to bribes or ask students for bribes for grades. I simply don't get to do that. If you found out that I was going on destination vacations paid for by the parents of my students, or private jet flights or what have you, that wouldn't be okay.
No.
And, it's disgusting. And the idea that he is doing this, he really should not be on the Supreme Court. And what's interesting to me is there are some folks who are part of the, I think Leonard Leo's group or others who've confronted Jesse Eisinger on Twitter, the site formerly known as Twitter, saying, yeah, how come you're only going after Republican justices? And he said, like we told you privately, and like I'll tell you here, bring us any tips you have. We will explore them and we'll write about it.
That's great. Well, Jen, I appreciate your time. It's so great to chat with you. Follow the Substack. What's in the Substack publication? I subscribe to it. I get it.
It's called Money and Gossip. It's an homage to
that's right.
Succession.
So check that out. Follow Jen on Threads. And if you're still on Twitter, thanks so much, my friend. Have a great night. I always appreciate your time and your insight.